Hello and welcome to this news live from Islamabad. I'm Javad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has discussed the Afghan peace process and matters of mutual interest with President Ashraf Ghani. Khan is in Kabul for his maiden one-day visit. The PM was presented with a guard of honor on arrival at the Afghan presidential palace. The Premier is accompanied by a high-level delegation, including Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. Pakistan's army says 2 soldiers were martyred as terrorists opened fire on a checkpost in South Waziristan. The army's media cell says another soldier was injured in the incident near Pash Zarat. It says an operation is underway to clear the area. Australia has credible evidence that its elite soldiers unlawfully killed 39 people during the Afghan war. The country's military released a long-awaited report into alleged war crimes committed in the South Asian nation. Australian Defence Chief Agnes Campbell says the army unreservedly apologizes to the Afghan people. The US death toll from COVID-19 has exceeded the 250,000 mark, as authorities say the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine candidates can be ready for distribution within weeks. India has recorded more than 45,000 new cases of the coronavirus, with a tally approaching 9 million. The countrywide death toll has crossed 131,000 with 585 fatalities in the last 24 hours. Pakistan reported some 2,500 cases and 18 deaths overnight, pushing its toll to 7,248. Globally, the virus has claimed 1.3 million lives and infected more than 56 million. And in tennis, Russia's Daniil Medvedev beat Serbia's world number 1 Novak Djokovic in straight sets to reach the semis for the ATP finals. The Serb hit 24 unforced errors and 5 double faults in a loss to 4th seed Medvedev. Djokovic can still qualify for the last 4 if he wins his final round-robin match against Germany's Alexander Zverev on Friday. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has discussed the Afghan peace process and matters of mutual interest with President Ashraf Ghani. This is Khan's first visit to Kabul since assuming office in 2018. The PM was presented with a guard of honor on arrival at the Afghan presidential palace. He was received by acting Afghan Foreign Minister Mohammad Hanif Atmar and other senior government officials. The Premier is accompanied by a high-level delegation, including Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. ISI Director General Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid and Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood are also part of the delegation. Australian elite troops are suspected of unlawfully killing 39 people in Afghanistan over 11 years. The country's military released a long-awaited report into alleged war crimes committed in the South Asian nation. The inquiry stated that 25 serving or former soldiers had carried out crimes or been accessories to them. Australian Defence Chief Agnes Campbell says the report uncovers a shameful record of a warrior culture by some soldiers. Campbell noted that none of the alleged killings could be described as being in the heat of the battle. He said the army unreservedly apologized to the Afghan people. A special investigator will be appointed to determine whether there was sufficient evidence to prosecute. The Taliban have hailed Pentagon's announcement to pull out some 2,000 troops stationed in Afghanistan. Earlier, the Pentagon said the U.S. will slash troops numbers in Afghanistan and Iraq to their lowest levels in nearly 20 years of war. In an interview, Taliban spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid said the step will prevent further escalation in the Afghan war. He said the move is in the interest of the people of both the countries. A U.S.-Taliban deal signed in February requires Washington to withdraw all the foreign forces from the country by May next year. In return, the Taliban promised not to attack the U.S. troops and also vowed to prevent groups like ISIS from operating in the country. Pakistan's army says 2 soldiers embraced martyrdom as terrorists opened fire on a checkpost in South Waziristan. The Army's media cell, ISPR, says another soldier was injured in the incident near Parch Zarat. It identified the deceased as Havaldar Matloob Alam and Sepoy Suleiman Shaukat. The Inter-Services Public Relations says security forces responded promptly. It adds an operation is underway to clear the area. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan says he takes full responsibility for losing the battle with Azerbaijan, but he has rejected calls for his resignation over Nagorno-Karabakh settlement. In a social media post, Pashinyan unveiled a 6-month action plan to ensure Armenia's democratic stability. He said he wants to prioritize the return of the people to areas still under the control of ethnic Armenians. The Prime Minister said he wants to restore formal talks over Nagorno-Karabakh under the auspices of the Minsk Group. Pashinyan has been under pressure after ceasefire pact secured Azerbaijan's territorial gains in Nagorno-Karabakh. The U.S. has announced new sanctions on Iran targeting a foundation controlled by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The Treasury Department says it has blacklisted what it called a key patronage network for Khamenei. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin said Khamenei uses Mustazafwan to reward his allies under the pretense of charity. In a statement, the department said the foundation, as well as 10 individuals and 51 entities, have been sanctioned. It added Iran's intelligence minister has also been targeted. The curbs mark the latest action to reinforce President Donald Trump's maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Israel has threatened to carry out more airstrikes in Syria if Iran continues its military presence in the country. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will not allow any Iranian attempts to attack Tel Aviv from Syrian territory. Netanyahu's office issued a statement hours after a deadly Israeli airstrike on Syria. This coincided with the visit of U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Israel. Pompeo said Tehran's influence in the region is waning after the Abraham Accords. He said the Iranian regime will be ever more isolated until it decides to change its ways. U.S. President Donald Trump's election campaign has stepped up legal efforts to discredit the November 3rd presidential election. Over the past 24 hours, the campaign has asked a district judge to declare the results defective in Pennsylvania. The court filing said the state's Republican-controlled legislature should select the electors that will vote for president. The lawsuit also alleges inconsistent treatment by county election officials of mail-in ballots. The Trump campaign said it will file a petition for a recount in the Milwaukee and Dane counties of Wisconsin. It said Trump has paid about $3 million for recounts in 2 counties. Meanwhile, pro-Trump demonstrations across the country have also picked up pace, with the largest rally so far in Atlanta, Georgia. Saudi Arabia says its relations with the United States will remain untouched under the new administration. In a media briefing, Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman said Riyadh's ties with Washington have withstood the test of time. Earlier, U.S. President-elect Joe Biden had pledged in his campaign to reassess ties with the kingdom. But the Saudi minister says the bilateral relations and the joint energy program will continue. He said energy cooperation could be a launchpad for a good relationship.
I have no qualms in my mind that we will, as we have done in the past with all the administrations, we will have a working relationship and we will have a joint energy program.
Iraq and Saudi Arabia have opened the Arar border crossing for trade for the first time in 30 years. Iraqi Interior Minister and the Saudi ambassador traveled from Baghdad to formally open Arar. In a statement, the Iraqi Border Ports Commission said Riyadh will soon open the Saudi Arabian side of the border crossing. It added the border will be open for both people and goods. The border has remained closed since 1990, following former Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait. The relations began improving in 2017 when then Saudi Foreign Minister Adil Al-Jubair traveled to Baghdad. It was followed by a Riyadh trip by then Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi. Jordan, Bahrain and the UAE have called for a just and comprehensive peace for the Palestinians. The joint statement came during a summit involving the top leadership of the three countries. Jordan's King Abdullah II, Bahrain's King Hamad Al Khalifa and Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed held a meeting in Abu Dhabi. Jordan state media said the leaders agreed on peace for the Palestinians based on the two-state solution. The UAE and Bahrain set aside hostilities with Israel in recent months to agree to formal ties. But Palestinian leaders have slammed these deals as a betrayal of their cause. 3 U.S. senators have announced plans to introduce legislation to halt the current government's proposed arms sale to the UAE. The sale includes F-16 and F-35 warplanes, over 14,000 bombs and drones worth $23 billion. Two Democratic and a Republican senator issued a joint statement. It said the Trump administration bypassed the usual congressional review process for the sale. It added that the normalization deal between Israel and the UAE doesn't require the U.S. to fuel a dangerous arms race in the Middle East. The senators said the UAE's recent behavior indicates these weapons may be used to violate international law. The UK has announced its largest military spending boost in 30 years. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the extra $21.8 billion will be to upgrade military capabilities. In a statement, Johnson said the world order is more competitive than at any time since the Cold War. He stressed Britain must be true to its history and stand alongside allies. Johnson said he took the decision even during the pandemic because defense of the realm must come first. He added the budget will be spent on pioneering new technology with plans for a new space command and artificial intelligence agency. The UK's current annual defence budget is over $55.4 billion. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The U.S. death toll from COVID-19 has exceeded the 250,000 mark. Authorities say the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine candidates can be ready for distribution within weeks. Globally, the virus has claimed 1.3 million lives and infected more than 56 million people. More in this report.
Thousands of deaths and infections pile on as the world continues to grapple with the second wave of the novel coronavirus. In the US, the virus is now claiming at least one life every minute. Many states are further tightening restrictions in the last bit to contain the outbreak before the vaccine arrives. And Pfizer, Moderna and BioNTech seek to soon get emergency authorization for their drugs.
It's great news. I think it means a lot that there's an end in sight and that, that folks can remain disciplined in these kind of, whatever, hopefully just this winter, and then by springtime we'll be back in business.
Over in Europe, Italy has reported 753 deaths overnight, its highest figure since the start of the second wave. Air France-KLM is preparing a test run to fly out dummy vaccine shipments in temperature-controlled conditions to the far-off regions. Meanwhile, the situation in Geneva remains tense with around 500 cases per day. Elsewhere, Russia's capital Moscow has turned the city's exhibition pavilion into a hospital as COVID-19 cases continue to rise.
Tomorrow will be a month since this hospital started to work. In the beginning, we admitted not so many patients and beds got occupied slowly. But now we admit quite a big number of patients almost every day. The numbers of cases are rising, so the hospital capacity and workload for medical workers are growing too. Patients come in great numbers now.
Japan.
Pakistan's Prime Minister is on his maiden day-long visit in Afghanistan. Right now, he is speaking along with President Ashraf Ghani at a joint press takeout.
خدای مراوله اتاسه راتک نن په هغه حالت کې چې تاوتریخ والی په شدت کې ده یو ډیر مهم او ارزښتمند پیام د افغانستان ټول ولس ته ده ما از حضور
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan is in Kabul on his maiden day-long visit at the moment. He, along with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, are speaking at the joint press takeout. At the moment, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani is speaking. The visit comes after the Afghan President Ashraf Ghani invited Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan to visit Afghanistan, and this particular visit
we've come to an understanding that a shared vision regarding cooperation is not only essential for relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan, but a harbinger of regional cooperation, connectivity. Our focus, our common focus, and what inspires us both is poverty eradication, empowerment of citizens of our countries, within the frameworks of our Islamic constitutions, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Respect for our Prophet, peace be upon him, is in the blood and mind of every Muslim, and as I brought to your attention, over 1,000 years review of literature in our history shows nothing but respect. There is not a single joke that you can find, because the Prophet's life and his tradition, his seerah, embodies the perfect Muslim's behavior, and as a guide to all of us. I'd like to thank you and assure you of our cooperation in making sure that our Occidental counterparts understand that positive freedom and negative freedom need to be differentiated. Negative freedom is a freedom, the exercise of which hurts other people. And the place of our Prophet in our Islamic belief, culture, and civilization is such that respect for the Prophet is respect for the entire Muslim world. Mr. Prime Minister, you come with a series of very important messages that you yourself will articulate. But fundamental to this is that violence is not an answer. A comprehensive political settlement for an enduring peace within the framework of our values, our constitution, and the Islamic Republic is the way to the future. Within this, we can move forward, and a comprehensive, at the request of the Afghan people, is for a comprehensive ceasefire. As soon as that would be feasible, all of us need to understand that resort to violence, the region is shown, and you're convinced from your personal experience, is not an answer. Embracing a constructive politics, a politics of engagement, an inclusive politics is the way to the future. Practically, we've agreed to form committees to deal with key topics to make sure that the foundation for trust that has been established with your trip today becomes an enduring process. And I would also like to inform the media that it would, within a short period, I would be honored to accept your invitation to visit the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Thank you for coming, and thanks to all your colleagues for their very productive and constructive engagement. Mr. Prime Minister.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. President Ghani, first of all, thank you for your invitation to visit Kabul. I had been planning for at least 50 years to visit Afghanistan and Kabul. But it never happened, so I'm pleased that you invited me and I had an opportunity to visit this historic city. I know all about the history of Afghanistan, and I noticed that you know a lot about the history of Pakistan and what is India. So we are both students of history, and therefore Kabul is one of those cities which are of immense interest to us and Afghanistan. Until in the 60s and 70s, the favorite place for Pakistanis to visit was Kabul, and a lot of people from Afghanistan used to be visiting. Peshawar was a place for them to visit. So we have historical links, we have connections, we have relations between the two countries. So the whole idea of coming at a time when violence is increasing in Afghanistan is to assure you, Mr. President, that we, the people of Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, have only one concern, and that concern is what you are feeling in Afghanistan, that we want peace. We feel that people of Afghanistan have suffered for 4 decades, and if ever a human community needed peace, it's Afghanistan, and it is now. Pakistan played its role in getting the Taliban to talk to the Americans, and then the intra-Afghan dialogue. And we noticed with concern that the level of violence, despite the talks in Qatar, despite the talks, the level of violence is rising. So my idea of choosing this time to come was to assure you that Pakistan will do everything, whatever is possible, we will do to help reduce this violence and, in fact, move towards a ceasefire. We have formed committees, as you've said. The idea of committees is to ensure that there's communication between us, between our security agencies. Whenever you feel that there's somewhere Pakistan can help in reducing the violence, please let us know. We assure you that whatever possible within our grasp, within our reach, whatever we can do, we assure you that we will be doing our utmost to reduce this level of violence. Pakistan is the country after Afghanistan which is most interested in peace in Afghanistan. And the reason is the tribal areas of Pakistan, what was the ex-FATA, which has now got merged into Pakhtunkhwa. The ex-FATA region, the tribal areas, were devastated by the war on terror. Half of the population was internally displaced. Their livelihood was badly affected. Billions and billions of rupees of damage was done there. And so the best way we can help those people, and people on both sides of the border, is if there is peace and there's trade, there's connectivity. So Commerce Minister had very fruitful talks in the past 3 days. We hope that this trade and connectivity will increase between the two countries. And for that, it is imperative that the level of violence goes down. So I repeat again, Mr. President, that the whole objective of this visit is to build trust, to communicate more, to assure you that wherever you need our help, we will be more than your expectations, we will be, inshallah, helping you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Please let me show you to the
Presidential palace in Kabul, where Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Ashraf Ghani were speaking at the joint stakeout. And during his speech, President Ashraf Ghani said that he first of all accepted Prime Minister Imran Khan's invitation to visit Pakistan, and he also said the common focus of both the countries is poverty alleviation and the empowerment of citizens. Prime Minister Imran Khan said Pakistan will do whatever it can in order to help bring peace in the war-torn Afghanistan. And it's the time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Another business updates. European stocks have declined over renewed fears of shutdowns due to rising coronavirus cases. The pan-European stock 600 slipped nearly 1%, with trade, oil and gas and travel stocks dropping. Frankfurt's DAX and London's FTSE slid close to 1% each. Italy's FTSE MIB declined well above 0.5%, while the CAC 40 in Paris shed almost 1% as well. Earlier Asian stocks traded mixed, with investors torn between optimism around a potential vaccine and economic worries. Chinese stocks, Seoul's Kospi and Australian bourses edged up, while Japanese stocks and Hong Kong index shed. In tennis, Russia's Daniil Medvedev beat Serbia's world number 1 Novak Djokovic in straight sets at the ATP finals. The Serb hit 24 unforced errors and 5 double faults in a loss to fourth seed Medvedev. Djokovic got just one chance to break Medvedev's serve in the whole match, while the Russian converted 3 of the 8 break points. Djokovic can still qualify for the last 4 if he wins his final round-robin match against Germany's Alexander Zverev on Friday. Zverev earlier won 6-3, 4-6 and 6-3 against Argentina's Diogo Schwartzman. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.